In combating the deadly Lassa fever, the government of Nigeria, Liberia, and Sierra Leone have begun the second phase of the largest ever epidemiological investigation study, Enable 1.5 research, an expanded research project that builds on the progress made from the previous Enable 1.0 research. The Enable 1.5 project is designed to support the development of an effective Lassa fever vaccine that can protect against the various strains of the virus found in Nigeria and across West Africa. KAFTANTV health correspondent Benedict Uku reports more on this new developments.
Lassa fever remains a serious public health threat in West Africa, with Nigeria bearing the highest burden. In recent years, outbreaks have become more frequent due to climate change, highlighting the urgent need for better preventive measures, including the development of a vaccine. In response, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, together with the governments of Nigeria, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, has launched the Enable 1.5 study, which aims to build on the findings and address gaps identified in the 1.0 study. The project coordinator in Nigeria, LC Ilori, explained that the goal of Enable 1.5 is to support the development of an effective Lassa fever vaccine that can protect against the various strains of the virus found in Nigeria and across West Africa.
For Lassa fever, just like some other diseases, we have symptoms fever, which is also common for malaria, for all other infectious diseases. So we want to be able to identify co-infection in Lassa fever, and that's using the malaria as a kind of as the point. The main purpose actually is for clinical studies to be able to produce vaccine towards Lassa fever disease, trying to make sure that we reduce the burden of Lassa fever in the country and West Africa in general.
One of the key focus areas of the new study is to examine Lassa fever in children aged 0 to 2 years, a group that was not included in the earlier research. The project manager of the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, Royce Fulton, outlined the organization's plans to develop a Lassa fever vaccine by the end of this decade.
We realize that it's not just important to try and have vaccines developed through clinical trials, but to do the additional groundwork necessary in order to be able to identify where the disease is, what sort of folks have the disease, where can we find places that we could recruit and use subjects for these clinical trials. But on top of that, build the necessary capacities within the countries and within our partners in Nigeria and other countries in order to be able to really prepare for the great work that lies ahead, which is to have clinical trials at a large scale that allow us to identify just how effective a new vaccine will be, with the ambition of having that vaccine ready by 2030 here in Nigeria.
The study is expected to investigate the co-occurrence of Lassa fever and malaria while assessing the ability to manage these cases effectively.
For the 4 sites in Nigeria, we'll be able to start the phase 2B trial of the Lassa vaccine candidates, and that would take a year. So immediately after that, and then after the analysis has been done, we'll now commence the phase 3 clinical trial. So the phase 3 clinical trial would take at least a minimum of a year or 2. So I would say that for the vaccine to be ready, we have to conclude the phase 3 clinical trial.
The gap identified in Enable 1.0, we are coming up with Enable 1.5 to be able to make sure all the challenges we envisage in the center or generally are covered, so that we'll be able to launch the vaccine, because there's already a candidate vaccine for Lassa fever.
The study will be conducted in 3 countries, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Liberia, with 5 sites selected based on the high burden of Lassa fever cases.